Alrighty, folks. So you've just got Arch booted through USB. I guess you've flashed it, and you are on this screen now. So I'm here to help you install Arch Linux, and then also I'll show you how to set up a graphical environment as well. So sit back. It's gonna be a long video. Could be about maybe an hour. Might be a little less. So yeah, let's go ahead and start. So first things first, we're gonna start with the keyboard layout. Um, Default, it is in the U.S. layout. So if you're from the United States, or I guess probably Canada, probably uses the same layout. I'm not sure what other countries use the U.S. layout. So if you're used to the U.S. layout, then go ahead and we can just continue here. But if not, er, give me a second here. What I'm typing in now, it'll actually show us all the layouts available. Oh shit. Map star map gz. Okay. Did I do something wrong? Key maps. Oh, I see it. Messed me up. Star dot map dot gz. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, there's a lot. So I would look up like what it is for your key map. But so for the sake of this tutorial, we're just gonna stick with the default US because that's what I use. But if you were to change it, for example, you do load keys de-latin1, so I believe that is the German keyboard layout. But we're gonna keep it here on the US layout. Okay. So next thing, we want to check our boot mode, which it's pretty likely that you're booted into UEFI mode. Um, BIOS is pretty old, but I mean you could be if you on like an old ThinkPad, could be BIOS or just old computer like a Dell Optiplex or something. There's a decent chance it's in BIOS mode. So in order to verify that, if you're not sure, ls/sys firmware EFI vars, and so this will only exist if you're booted into UEFI mode. And so since we're getting output here, it's just checking we are booted into UEFI mode. So you need to know for sure which mode you're in, because this will be important later when we're actually setting up our partitions and whatnot. Okay, so we've got that out of the way. We're in UEFI mode. Next thing, we want to check if we have an internet connection. So we'll say ping archlinux.org. And as you can see, we're getting responses here, so we are good there. Internet is working. So if you're kind of a Linux newbie and you're not sure how to stop it, like you can see if I'm typing, it just keeps going. We have to send the interrupt signal in order to do that, you just hit Control and then the letter C, and that'll interrupt it. So there's that. So if you're using wired connection, which I would recommend, it should automatically work. If you're using Wi-Fi, you have to use the IWCTL utility, which yeah, I'm not sure exactly. You call upon it like that, and then from here you'd have to kind of just, I would look at the wiki for this. I've used this before, but I don't remember off the top of my head, and I'm already wired in, so there's nothing for me here. But you'd use that if you're using Wi-Fi. So go to here. So establish we got internet connection. Next thing we want to check on is that the clocks are, I guess the system clock is synchronized. So time date CTL. Important thing here is to check system clock synchronized, and it's yes. So we are good there. So now that we've got that out of the way, this is probably the next step here. It's probably going to be the most difficult part of this tutorial, and it'll be partitioning the disks. So go ahead, fdisk-l, and the L is for actually listing. And so right now we see we've got two disks here, two devices I guess. So dev VDA and div loop 0. And so pretty much anything that's got like loop, um, ROM, AI root, there might be a few more, but those you can pretty much ignore just because they're loopbacks, or you can just ignore them. Um, so here I'm on a virtual machine, so that's why dev VDA that'll be our main disk that we're gonna be using. As you can see, size is 30 gigabytes. Um, for your setup, whatever you're using, you would definitely, I mean, you would know just based off the size. Like if you got a 1 terabyte SSD, it'll say like dev SDA size, it'll say 1 terabyte. Or if you've got less, 500 gigabytes, I mean, you'll know what disk is yours. And if you got multiple disks, you'll just have to kind of sort them through the sizes and figure out what size is what, etc. But you get the point. Or if you got an NVMe, I know a lot of times it's dev slash NVMe, so that's kind of easier way to figure that out. So now that we've got our disk here, we know it's dev VDA. We're gonna go ahead and actually make some partitions. And so this part now it's useful to actually, well, it's more than useful, you have to know. So we know that we are booted into UEFI mode right now. And so that's important because when you're on UEFI mode, you need a EFI system partition along with at least your root partition and possibly a swap partition as well. So I'll go ahead and explain that a little bit more. So the EFI system partition, that is typically where your bootloader is going to be installed. So like systemd boot or grub or whatever type of bootloader you're going to use, it's going to live there in that partition. I don't know exactly why you have to have an EFI system partition when you're booted into UEFI. You just do. So let's go ahead now. Let's create our partitions. So you can use fdisk to actually do your partitions, but I prefer I'm just gonna list them again. I prefer to do cfdisk, which is kind of like a we're still doing it in the terminal, but it's more of a like a graphical environment to help you out. So in order to actually make the partition now, so you use cfdisk, and then you select which disk you want to adjust here. So I'm going to do dev VDA. Make sure you type this right so you don't mess up any other disk possibly. So go ahead and hit enter. So here with the label type, typically if your disk is over 2 terabytes, you don't want to select GPT, DOS, anything below. I know that's the proper way, but honestly I like just always selecting GPT, so we're just gonna go with GPT here. Alright, so as you can see here, this is all just free space. So whenever I'm doing partitioning here, I always like to start with the EFI partition just so I don't forget about it. So we'll start off, see you got new, quit, help, write, and dump. So we're gonna do new and partition size. So with the EFI system partition, I think it can be pretty small. It's recommended to be at least 300 megabytes. If you're going to be installing multiple kernels, then probably around 1 gigabyte would be fine. So it really depends on your use case. So if you don't know what a kernel is, that's fine. We'll keep it simple. I like to just go with 512 megabytes. So partition size, so say example, if you want to do like 100 gigabytes, you'd be 100 G for gigabyte, and M is for megabyte. So 512 megabytes, so that's half gigabyte. So go ahead, hit enter. So we've got that now, but we do need to adjust now the typing. So dev VDA1, that is our first partition. Everything here is correct except, like I said, the typing. It says a Linux file system, so you want to go to type, hit enter, and as you remember I said this got to be the EFI system. So go ahead, hit enter on EFI system. Okay, so we've done that. We're gonna go now to our free space here. This next part, it's optional and it's called a swap partition. which a swap, it's handy if, say, if you wanted to use Hibernate on your computer. Basically, Hibernate, I mean, I'm sure you know what Hibernate is, but when you hibernate your system, it takes everything from the RAM and it's got to write it to swap. And so, say for example, if you had 8 gigs of RAM on your system, then you're going to need at least 8 gigs of swap space. But if you don't want to use Hibernate, then that's totally fine. You don't need any swap space. But usually, just for good measure, I like to go just 1 gig and swap. So let's do that. So we'll do 1G. Go ahead, hit enter, and type. So yeah, we do need to change the type for swap. So right there, Linux swap. So go ahead, hit Linux swap. If you're doing swap, that is. Alright, and so the remainder of the disk here, give me a second. So you can do this however you want. You could do like a partition for your home. I mean, you could really split this up however you want, but just for newbies, let's just keep it simple. So the rest of this here, let's keep it as our root partition. So we'll go ahead and hit new, and this time we're not gonna fill in anything of partition size. It's gonna just autofill for us because we're gonna be using the rest of the disk for this. So 28.5 gigabytes. So we'll go ahead, hit enter, and typing here, we don't need to change the typing because our root partition, it's gonna hold the rest of our data, and so the root is always Linux file system. So let's go over this quickly. So we've got our EFI, our swap, and our root partition here. So double check if you're in UEFI mode, you need this for sure, or else your system, it will not boot. So make sure you've got this EFI system partition. Swap is optional. You don't need swap. It kind of depends. And of course, you do need your root partition if you want to actually have a system to install to. So now that we've got all of that, let's go ahead and write these changes. So just hover over write, enter, and then it's going to say, are you sure you want to write this partition to the partition table to the disk? And go ahead, just type yes, and enter. So let's go ahead now, quit, and do fdisk-l. And so now you can see here under the dev VDA disk, we've got dev VDA1, dev VDA2, and dev VDA3. So those are the 3 partitions that we created. Alrighty folks, so now that you have actually set up your partition table, honestly I would say it's probably the hardest part of the whole installation process. So if you got through this, I mean, the rest of this, it's pretty straightforward. If you're kind of confused by what I'm doing or what I was doing, I would recommend that you just read up on the installation guide, just wiki.archlinux.org/title/installation_guide. And from there you can kind of read a bit more in depth about what your partition table should look like a little bit more, and then you can watch my video to kind of just fill in what might be kind of confusing there. So now that we've got everything here, we need to format the partitions with an appropriate file system. So we'll start off here with the root partition. We're gonna be using the ext4 file system for our root partition. It doesn't have to be ext4. Like you could use, for example, like btrfs, xfs, couple others, but I recommend if you're new, we'll just start with ext4. So this command here, mkfs, you can kind of think of it as like make file system, and then .ext4, and we want to apply this to our root partition. And so in my case, this will be dev VDA3, but make sure if you are trying to follow this here, yours will probably be different than mine. Like yours might be dev SDA. It just depends what order you went in, but make sure you're matching up the correct device so you're not gonna mess anything up here. So yeah, for me, dev VDA3, that's our root partition. So got this, go ahead, hit enter, and everything looks good there. So it's that simple. Like, it seems kind of intimidating, but it's pretty simple. So next up here, if you did make a swap partition, we want to initialize it. So mk swap, you just think of it as make swap, and for me it'll be dev vda2. And if you didn't do swap, then obviously you can skip this step. And so now for the EFI partition here, it'll be mkfs.fat -f32 dev, and then vda1 is our EFI partition. So now that we've got that here, we actually want to mount our disks. Oops. So I'm just clearing off my screen to make it a little bit more or readable, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so next step here, mount, and then so we're gonna mount our root partition first. So dev vda3, that's our root partition, and we're gonna mount this on -mnt. Go ahead, hit enter. Alright, and then now we're going to mount our boot partition. So our boot partition, that's also our EFI partition there. So we're gonna do mount, and then this is kind of handy. So we're gonna do -s mkdir, and this is for basically where we're mounting it. The directory doesn't exist yet, and we can actually combine make dir to actually make the directory while we're mounting it. So mount -s make dir mkdir dev vda1, and we're gonna mount that on /mnt/boot/EFI, and go ahead, hit enter. Alright, and then next up here, you don't need to mount your swap partition. What you need to do is just enable it if you did do swap. So it'll be swap on, and then in our case vda2 is our swap, so swap on dev vda2. Alright, so here is the fun part. Now we're actually going to be, this is where we're going to be installing our system. So packstrap -k/mnt, and if you remember /mnt, that is where we actually put our root partition. So it's basically, it's installing everything you need for an Arch Linux system in the in our root partition. So we're going to do base linux-firmware base devel. So this might take some time, just depends if your internet connection is fast, slow. So it'll take a couple minutes, could take longer than that, 10-15 minutes, so just give us some time. Alrighty, so yeah, it took a couple minutes here. So our next step here now, this is very important. So this is going to be generating our fstab file, or fstab, whatever you want to call it. And the point of this file is that when you boot into your system, it's going to automatically mount our partitions where they should be. So if you don't get this file right, your system is very likely not going to boot. So let's make sure we get this right, but it's pretty straightforward. So gen fstab, whoops, was not typing, gen fstab, and then we're gonna do -u, which stands for UUID, and I'd recommend that you always do it with a -u, just because the other option is -l, which it'll do with labels. And if you're doing it with labels, the problem with that is if you say you're having a problem with your PC, or if you're installing more storage, the label is going to get changed. And since our fstab is based off of labels, then the way that your disks are going to get mounted, or your partitions are going to get mounted, it's just going to mess up. But if you do -u, like if you swap around like where they're plugged in your computer, If you add a new disk, this is not going to mess anything up. So we'll stick with genfs tab dash u and then slash mnt. So that is basically what that's going to do for now is since we mounted everything on slash mnt, we're going to rewrite it, these double arrows, we're going to rewrite it to slash mnt slash etc slash fs tab. So that's going to be the location of our file. So go ahead, enter on that, and so now let's actually check the file to make sure there's no errors. So vim etc or slash mnt slash etc slash fs tab. So as you can see here, from our VDA3, that was our root partition, so we verified that. Here the forward slash, this means root, file system ext4, perfect. VDA1, so yeah, this is our EFI partition, so boot EFI, perfect. And this last one, VDA2, that's our swap, which as you see here, it just says swap. So everything here looks good, and if you're not sure exactly what this means, that's perfectly fine. As long as you mounted your partitions correctly earlier, then this file should theoretically be correct, but it's always good to just double check it. So everything looks good here, and if you're new to Vim, if you're not sure how to exit, go ahead, hit escape, hit colon, and then quit, and then hit enter, and that'll exit you from Vim. Alrighty, so next step here, we're gonna change root into our new system, which basically it's like we're gonna be in our new system. So we'll do arch dash root change root slash mnt. So now we're in our new system here. I mean, if you do ls, as you can see here, this is where everything was installed. So we're getting pretty close to done with the main installation here. So go ahead now, we're gonna set the time zone. So to set the time zone, do ln dash sf slash user share zone info, and then this next spot here, this is where you're gonna put the region, which for me it'll be America, and then city. I'm in the mountain time zone, so for me that'd be Denver. If you're in central time zone, then I think it's Chicago, etc. You just gotta figure out exactly where your time zone is. But so for me, since I'm in mountain time zone, America, Denver, and then slash etc local time. Perfect. So now HW clock dash dash sys, and I don't really know exactly what this does, but just run it. Okay, yeah, it just generates a certain file for us. So next step here, we need to edit a file. So we're gonna do vim etc locale.gen, because we're gonna generate these. Oh, we don't have vim yet, so I forgot about that. So basically, since we changed root into our system here, we're not gonna have a lot of things installed. So let's do pacman dash s, and so in Arch Linux, pacman is the package manager. Dash s, it's supposed to stand for sync, which I'm not sure exactly why, but basically anytime you're doing pacman most of the time, you'll need the dash s. And then now we're actually gonna type in the package we want to install. So it'd be vim, and we'll just hit yes. Alrighty, so we've got vim installed. So now vim this file. So we're gonna uncomment the locales that we need, which for me, I just need the one. It'll be en underscore us. Did I miss it? Oh yeah, I did. I went too far. Okay, right here. So en underscore us. And so if you're new to Vim, you'll probably wonder like how do I edit things? So I'm hitting backspace and it's not doing anything. So in Vim, you actually have to change into edit mode or insert mode to actually change things. So we'll do I for insert mode. As you can see in the bottom left, it shows insert mode. So we'll just delete that comma, or not that comma, the like pound sign or hashtag, whatever you want to call it. Delete that, and so that uncommented the line. And so For me in particular, I just needed this line to be uncommented, but if you need any of these other locales, then you just uncomment that there. But so once you've done that, go ahead, hit escape, change back into command mode, and it'll do colon and then a right quit WQ, because that'll write our changes, then quit. Alrighty, so now that we've done that here, let's go ahead and now we need to create, or I guess we actually need to generate this first. So do locale-gen. Alright, so now next step here, we need to create this file. So we'll do vim /etc locale.conf. Alright, so in this file here now, do lang equals en_us dot utf -8. Make sure I got this right. utf-8. Okay, perfect. So right quit. And if you did set the keyboard layout to something different than US, what you do vim /etc v console. If I could type it, vconsole.conf. You'd make this file, and then this is where you would type in your key map, but we're just keeping it default. So quit. Alright, so next step here, we need to actually set the host name for the machine. So we'll do vim /etc hostname, and I'm gonna just say arch VM. That'll be my host name. So this could literally be anything, like whatever you want your host name to be. So I'll right quit that. Next, O-P. So a lot of the time this usually isn't required. This is just creating a new init RAM FS, just because it actually was run when we were doing the system installation with Packstrap, but we're just gonna run this again just because it says in the I'm actually on the installation guide on the wiki, like even if you're experienced like me, I'm pretty experienced with Arch. Anytime you are doing an install, it's good to look over the wiki just so you don't miss a crucial step. So if you see here how we're getting like warning for possibly missing firmware for module, that's perfectly fine to ignore just because your PC might not need the firmware for those modules. You might even not have those modules. So if you see something like that, don't panic. It's perfectly normal. Alrighty, so our next step here now is to set the root password. So we'll just do password and then hit enter. And it's going to look like you're not typing, which is normal as well. It's just for security purposes. So we've updated our root password. So here now, just before you do a reboot, we're almost done now. We need to install at least 2 more things, which would be our networking and our bootloader. And so that's kind of the advantages of Arch, is it's so minimalistic that we need to actually install these things. So if you rebooted now your system, you wouldn't be able to boot and you wouldn't have an internet connection to your system. So first step here, let's do network manager. That's what I use for networking. So we'll do pacman-s network manager. Alright, and then so we're gonna want to enable the service for network manager so that we actually can have an internet connection. So we'll do systemctl enable network manager. So we've got that enabled here. So a common mistake when you're trying to enable network manager is, I know some people, if they do enable and then if you type network manager without the capitalized or the capitalization on the N and the M, it's going to give you an error. So just make sure you capitalize the N in network and the M in manager. Alright, so we're almost done with the installation part. Last thing we need is a bootloader. So you could do like systemd boot, grub, any other bootloader of your choice, which I like sticking with grub, so that's what we're gonna do here. So we're gonna do pacman-s and grub. Install the package. Alright, and so it gives you some instructions here. So first step, we're gonna do grub-install. And actually, since we're on EFI, UEFI mode, we need to install one more package. We'll do pacman-s. I think it's EFI vars, maybe? Okay, I forgot what it's called, so let's just run the grub install. It's gonna give us an error real quick. Yeah, okay, EFI boot manager, that's what it's called. So that's another package. EFI boot mgr, we need that. Okay, so yeah, we'll do grub-install now. Alright, perfect. Installation finished, no error reported. And so now we do need to generate the config file, so do grub-mkconfig, make config -o. -o is for output, and so this file will be stored as /boot/grub/grub.cfg. And perfect here. Yeah, everything looks good. So at this point now we can actually reboot the system. So we are still in chroot or change root, so we'll do exit, and then now let's do reboot. Alright, so if you did this correctly here, you're gonna be getting hopefully Arch Linux. Advanced options for Arch Linux or UEFI firmware settings. So we'll go ahead now, choose Arch Linux, hit enter. Alright, and uh, so that was, I guess, yeah, that's probably the most difficult part of this. And so now with this installation, it is a full functioning operating system, but it's Arch, so it's pretty minimal. So as you can see here, we're only on a terminal, and we only have our root login set up. So let's go ahead, we'll do root, and I'll enter our password. So it is not secure to stay with a root user. So in this next section here, we're gonna create some user accounts, probably just one if it's just your PC. So we're gonna create a user account. We're also going to be setting up a graphical environment. So yeah, we'll be starting that in just a moment. Alright, so you've made it this far. Congratulations. Um, Next step here, we're gonna create a user account. So it's pretty straightforward. So the command is user add, and then remember, I think it's -m, which this is gonna create our home directory, and then G, uppercase G, this is gonna say what groups we want to be in. So we want to be in the wheel group, and then the next thing is going to be the actual name of your account. So we're just going to call this test. And so it gives you no feedback there, which means it's correct. So next thing we want to do is pass wd. We want to change the password of this. We'll do password test. That's the name of the account, test. Alright, so now we've got this, one more thing, we want to actually make sure that this user can do the sudo command, or the sudo, because we want to, it's best to generally have a unprivileged user, and then anytime you need to elevate your privileges, then that's what sudo is for, just for security purposes. So next we're going to edit the sudoers file. So to do that, the command is vi-sudo, which we're gonna get an error here. It's gonna say no editor found. So to get past this here, just because for vi-sudo the editor path is vi, and we don't have vi installed. So I mean, I guess we could just do pacman-s and we'll install vi real quick. So now if we do vi-sudo, so this is gonna work, but and you typically pretty much always want to edit the sudoers file with vi sudo, because if you mess this file up and it's not readable for some reason, then that's bad news. So just always run this as vi sudo. As you can see at the top there, it kind of gives you a little bit of an explanation. So if you want to use a different editor, like say nano, you can do editor equals nano, but for this case we're going to do vim. So editor equals vim and then vi sudo. And so that's how you can override which editor you want to use to edit this. So we're going to go down here, and you remember how we set our user account to be the wheel group? In a lot of Linux distributions, the wheel group is kind of like the administrator group, if you want to call it. So just to make it a little bit more simple here, so we're going to do let's see. So yeah, right here, uncomment to allow members of group wheel to execute any command. So we're gonna uncomment this here. So just get rid of that. So wheel. If you wanted to add yourself there, it would just be like your name for your group. But it's pretty easy. We'll just stick with the wheel group. That's why we added ourselves into the wheel group. So once you've got that, go ahead, escape. If you're using vim :wq, right quit, enter. So from here on, we should be good to actually change into our account. So we're gonna do su and then test. So substitute user, and then we're gonna change into test. And this dash here, this means we're inheriting the test user environment. Or even better, what you could do, just do exit. This will bring us back into the login. So we're gonna log in as test, type in our password. So we are now an unprivileged user. So say for example, we're gonna try and update the system. So we'll do, as an example, do pacman-syu, and so you cannot perform this operation unless you're root. So we're gonna do sudo pacman-syu, and so it's gonna give you this little spiel here the first time you actually do use the sudo command. So enter our password, and perfect. So sudo, configure that properly. So that's very, very important that you want to make sure you get that right, because you don't want to be always logged in as the root user. It's just bad. It's bad for security purposes. Say if you get malware on your system and you're logged in as a root user, it could just really mess up a lot of things. Which malware on Linux, it's a lot more uncommon than Windows, but it's still a thing. So you always want to be logged in as an unprivileged user. So let's test our network manager to make sure we actually got an internet connection, which I think, yeah, that command before wouldn't have worked with the update. So next step here, this is just you gotta do this. We gotta install neofetch, because once you've installed Arch, you gotta flex on your friends. So we're gonna do neofetch. So you gotta show this to your friends once you've installed Arch. Alrighty, so now that we've got our full installation here, let's actually get a graphical environment, because we don't want to stay in this terminal forever. So first off, let's install a terminal emulator. So we're going to do pacman-s, we're going to do kitty, our terminal emulator. Let's do Firefox, and from there we should be good. So just kitty, web browser. And this might take a little bit, so just give us some time. Alrighty, so now we've got that, we actually want to get our desktop environment. And so I would recommend a really nice desktop environment, in my opinion, is KDE Plasma. There's a whole lot of other desktop environments like GNOME or GNOME, XFCE. There's a lot others. So if you're not sure which one to pick, then I would recommend just doing a quick Google search and just figuring out which one looks nice to you. But I do really recommend KDE Plasma. It looks nice. So I actually kind of forgot the name of the package specifically, so we're gonna actually search. We'll do pacman dash capital S and then lowercase s, so that'll be searching. And so let's just type plasma. And so as you can see, it kind of brought up a whole bunch of stuff here that I'm not sure exactly which one we want. So in order to narrow down our search results a little bit, we're gonna do so this here, this is a pipe, and so this will help us combine two commands in one. So we're gonna search, and then this next command, it's grep, which this is actually going to search like the strings and help us narrow our searches down a little bit further. So we're gonna grep by, and then dash I, this just ignores case, and then desktop. So this should help us find what we need exactly. Okay, so yeah, plasma dash desktop, that's the one we want. And it gives you a little bit of description. It's like KDE plasma desktop. So that's exactly what we want to install. So we're gonna do sudo pacman dash s, and then plasma dash desktop. That's the name of the package. So this is about a gigabyte, so we'll install its size anyways. So this will take a little bit, so just give us some time. Alrighty, so we've got our desktop environment installed, and so now you're wondering, how do we actually get to our desktop? So each desktop environment, they will come with it's what's called a trying to think of the word, like a login manager, or like a display manager. And so you'll need to do a little bit more research just on your own to kind of figure out which ones come with which. I mean, typically any uh, manager, like display manager, will work with any desktop environment. So I know, like for example, like KDE Plasma, the one we just installed, it does use SDDM, which stands for Simple Display Something Manager. No, actually, let me look it up. Oh, a simple desktop display manager. So that comes with KDE Plasma. So, and actually to get to our environment now, so we're gonna do sudo systemctl start sddm. Well, that's awkward. Maybe it's not installed for some reason. Oh, okay, it actually didn't install it for some reason. I thought it would. Okay, so that's my bad. So we actually do need to install SDDM as well. So let's go ahead. Let's get that installed. Okay, good. So now this should work. So sudo systemctl start sddm. And typically with SDDM, it'll find your session here. So session plasma, KDE plasma, keyboard layout, which you have just US. If you need a different layout, you can mess with that later. So this is our account. Let's log in. Alrighty, and yeah, we've got our environment here. Pretty cool. We can open up a terminal. Neo fetch. And yeah, it's pretty minimal on RAM. Obviously, it's gonna go up more once you install more things. And yeah, this is why I recommend a Plasma, 'cause it's kind of like a Windows-like feel to it. So if you're coming from Windows, this will definitely it'll feel new to you. But yeah, as you can see, there's really not a whole lot of things, because this is very minimalistic install because we're on Arch. So let's now display. Yeah, it won't let me edit the display just because we are on a VM. That's why the resolution looks weird. So let's go ahead now. If we do a reboot from here, it's going to, I'll show you what it does. So since we only started SDDM, it's gonna kick us back into this TTY, or just the regular terminal. So now what we gotta do is do sudo systemctl enable SDDM. So now each time you start up your system, it'll actually just go right into the graphical environment off the get-go. So we'll test that out, do reboot. Arch Linux. So you'll see this for a moment, but it'll, so yeah, it kicks us right into the graphical environment. And yeah, that wraps up our. Actually, I want to try this real quick. Oh, we don't even have that. Okay, but yeah, this basically wraps up our Arch Linux install. We've got our minimal desktop environment here. We set up user accounts, everything like that. So yeah, of course you gotta show this NeoFetch output. Make sure you show it to your friends. See, here we got our browser. So yeah, make sure you get at least a browser and a terminal emulator installed before you go into your desktop environment, or else you won't be able to run commands. So if you did forget that, what you can do, give me a second here. So if you do Control Alt F1, F2, F3, that'll send you to a TTY. So like Control F2, so we're on TTY2. So that is what you do, and then you can get back to here and install whatever terminal emulator package that you need. But yeah, you should be set here. Yeah, if you want to see any more Linux tutorials, go ahead, hit like, subscribe, put in the comments what tutorial you'd like to see next. So yeah, thank you for watching.